Our next module is Describe Azure Storage Services. Let's have a quick look. What are the topics we are going to learn in this? In this, we are going to get understanding of Azure Storage Accounts, Azure Storage Redundancy, Azure Storage Services, Storage Blob, what it is, and then Azure Data Migration Option, Azure File Movement Options, and then a knowledge check and a bit of summary. This is what we are going to learn. Let's understand what is Azure Storage. Azure Storage is a secure Microsoft Cloud storage solution. When you think of storage, what comes to your mind? Let's say your laptop has a hard drive. You're storing data on your laptop's hard drive, correct? Similar way, Microsoft provides various cloud storage solutions. Let's see what are those. In our mind, it only comes the hard drive, but there are various types of storage solutions. The first one called blob storage. The second one, disk storage, which we all are aware of. The third one is called a file system storage. The next one is called a queue storage. And there is another one called table storage. Let's see what are all of this one by one. The first one is a blob storage. Now, what is blob storage or Azure Blob? This one is used to store unstructured data. Now, what are unstructured data? For example, images on your website. Let's say, for example, videos, for example, audios on your application. These are all unstructured data. Now, blob storage is used for storing unstructured data. What is disk storage? And we already know about it. You must have heard about the virtual machine, right? The virtual machine as a service what we get from Azure. Now, storing data in Azure virtual machine, like on your computer, you have a hard drive, and these hard drives can be of many types. For example, there is a type called SSD, solid state drive. And these are reliable when you need higher performance and workloads to manage. Then you go with the solid state drives. The other one is our conventional hard drives for less critical business scenarios. So Azure also provide you help with the disk storage solutions. I need two SSDs or for example 1 terabyte. I need a SSD for 2 terabyte for my virtual machine where I'm hosting an application. Then I can get those from Azure. The next thing is file system storage. Now, what is file system storage? Now, this is for file sharing in the cloud. You might have used a lot of cloud solutions where you are storing your documents, your files, and you can use them to share it with others. So, file sharing in the cloud, this is called file system storage. That solution also we get it from Microsoft Azure. The next storage solution is called queue storage. Now, what is queue storage? For messaging between application components. What does messaging between application component mean? Think of a real world scenario. Order processing. For example, I'm doing an order processing. Now there, imagine there will be many components of the application which has to interact. Think the customer has placed an order. And then it is asking you, okay, asking the customer, pay the amount. He paid the amount, but again, the application has to literally check whether the amount is received or not before proceeding further. Let's say if it has received, then it proceeds further. Then the application component has to create something called in the backend for the to see if that component is available and start the shipping. So there are many things happens behind the scene. So queue storage is a solution which helps for messaging between application components. It will pass the data from one component to the other component in a queued manner. Okay. Imagine there are thousands and thousands of customers who are placing order. at the same time. Now this helps in queuing those data and sending it to various application components. The next storage solution is called table storage. Now table storage is a NoSQL database storage solution. Now what do I mean by NoSQL database storage solution? It does not rely on predefined schemas or tables like the SQL databases. If you have worked, it has its schemas, it has its tables, right? So it doesn't depend on those. It's called NoSQL database. Now this is more flexible and scalable. It is more flexible and scalable. It generally works with a key and pair, right? You might have worked with the JSON files and things like that. It's similar to that. So table storage solution is another solution from Microsoft. Now let's understand what is a storage account. Imagine a storage account is like your own personal locker in the Azure cloud to store your data. For any application that you generally use, you have an account. For example, your Gmail, your Facebook, or anything, right? So you have an account. Similar way, Azure account is required. Your Azure storage account is required. Just like a locker has a unique number to identify it, your storage account has a unique address where your data is stored. Now, you can store things like files, images, or data in it and access them securely from anywhere in the world. So, Azure account or a storage account gives you a unique space in Azure to store your data, which you can access securely from anywhere in the world using the internet, such as HTTPS. So I can access my data securely from the internet. So this is unique space in Azure to store your data. When you create your storage account, you will start by picking the storage account types. So let's see what are the different storage account types are available. Okay, first of all, let's see why the storage account types are. Why should I even choose an account type? So let me simplify this for you. Now the type of storage account you are going to select, that is going to help you in two important parts. One is what services you can use. For example, storing files, backups, etc. It will decide your service type. And it will also decide the important part, how redundant is your data. Meaning, how many copies are made and where those copies are kept. Redundant means, for example, I have a copy here in Bangalore, I have another copy somewhere in another city. So if something happens here with the data in Bangalore, I still have my data saved somewhere else. I don't lose the data. Now let's see these account types. So there are various different account types. Now redundancy options, that gives you redundancy options. Just imagine you are taking a backup of your important photos, for example. Take that as an imagine that you have few data like your photos, and what are the options with Azure that you get in redundancy. So what is that? Let's see it. So the first term is LRS, stands for locally redundant storage. What it is? Locally redundant storage means, imagine saving 3 copies of your photos in the same city. I am storing 3 copies. One is here, one is there. In the same city, I'm storing 3 copies in the city. If something happens to one copy, the other 2 are still safe. So this kind of a service or an account type, if I'm taking a LRS account type, locally redundant storage, this is the option I would get. More kind of your data is safe. This is a low cost backup needs. The second type is called geo redundant storage, GRS. So the first one is LRS. The second one is GRS. So LRS means locally redundant storage. Remove the word redundant storage, RS, L for locally. The second one is GRS, geo redundant storage. Now with the word geo, when it comes, Imagine you are saving those 3 copies of your photo in your city. You already have 3 copies in your city. Apart from that, 3 more in different city, 3 more copies in different cities far away. Okay, 3 more copy in a different city. If disaster hits your city, your data is safe. So you had 3 copies in your city. What if your entire city has a disaster? You lost all the data. The data center is destroyed. So in that case, what happens? In that case, if you go with GRS, your 3 more copies of your data is stored in a different city far away. This is called geo redundant storage or GRS, LRS, GRS we saw. Now moving on to the third one, read access geo redundant storage. Same as GRS, just like your global redundant, geo redundant storage. Same as that, but you have something called read access. So read access RAGRS. You can also read view the backup. There you have a backup. If required, that backup can be restored for you. Here you can read and view the backup data in the other city whenever you want. You getting it? This is the third option. Now what is the fourth option? The fourth option is zone redundant storage, ZRS. What is this ZRS or ZRS? Zone redundant storage. Instead of just one city, your 3 copies are spread across different neighborhoods of your city. So instead of keeping in one data center, I have, let's say, my zone when I have 3 zones in my city, it becomes a region, right? So in a region, I have 3 different places in the city. So one electronic city in Bangalore, one in Whitefield, the other one is in Hebal, for example. So now 3 copies are spread across different neighborhoods of my city. So if something happens in this neighborhood in electronic city, I still have my data in Whitefield. I still have my data in another place of my city. So this is called zone redundant storage. And you know, all the regions doesn't have 3 zones. Some of the regions have only 1 zone, right? And some of them have 3 zones. So if you go with zone redundant, so your data is there in multiple parts of your neighborhoods of your city. Okay. So this protects your data if one entire neighborhood has an issue. Getting it? So zone redundant or JRS. So LRS, locally redundant storage. GRS, geo redundant storage. And the next one we understood, zone redundant storage. Okay. Now the next one is geo zone redundant storage. So it's a mix of your GRS. Zone means you imagine in your city there are 3 different locations. Zone. You have 3 different zones in your city. One in electronic city, other one is Whitefield, like that. Okay. So you have your 3 copies stored in the zone redundant storage and GRS, geo redundant. So it is there in some other cities far away from you, right? So 3 copies in multiple zones of your city and 3 more in a different city far away. So this gives you more options. It's called ZZRS, ultimate protection for critical data. So when you go for it, when you have a very, very critical data, you want to absolutely have them. That's where you go with ZZRS. Okay. Now the sixth option is RA. RA means read access, geo zone redundant storage. Same as GZRS, but you can also view the backup data in the faraway city whenever needed. So there you just have a backup. If something goes wrong, it can be restored, but here you can, and after restoring, you can see it. But here you can also see it anytime you need. So these are the 6 different storage account types that we have seen. To conclude about this redundancy, let me give you a simple example to remember. Think of storing your family photos. So when I go with this LRS type, so locally redundant storage is like saving them on 3 devices in your home. So in your home only, you have 3 different devices where you are storing your photos. One on my laptop, one on my phone, one on my my family member's phone. So 3 places I kept. So LRS means locally redundant storage. You are locally in your city only, you are storing in 3 different devices. Geo redundant storage means what? Is saving them at home you are having 3 copies at your home already in 3 devices, and in your friend's house in another city. So your friend is storing some, he's staying in some other city, and you also gave him the copies to keep it. So he has kept it. So GRS is geo redundant storage. Far away from city, you are storing the data. RAGRS means what? Let you access them at your friend's house anytime. So, so the friend who is far away, but he can, through internet, you can connect and access and see the data. That is called read access. You get read access to geo redundant storage. Okay. Similar way, there was something called ZRS, zone redundant storage. Means I have my data in my home. I also, in the same city, there is another friend whom I gave the data. He kept it in his device. I gave one more friend who is there in another part of the city. So I kept in 3 different zones of my city. So that are called zone redundant storage. So with this example, you can remember these terms for a very long term. As we have seen the redundancy options with Azure, now is time to look at different account types, different account storage account types in Azure. So the first one is standard general purpose version 2 storage account. So version 2 means earlier there was a earlier older version, now it is an improved version. This is for general purpose, the very basic account type, general purpose. Now what it supports. Now we have seen in the first slide of this video where we have seen different storage types, right? Blob storage, including data lake storage. This we haven't spoken about. We will see it later. Blob storage for storing videos, images, audios, medias, right? All those things. Queue storage, so the application can interact with its own components by sharing the data. Queue storage. Think of order processing where many people around the world process, placing an order, and account verification, inventory verification, a lot of things happens in the backend. So all these data are queued and get passed to the other components of that application. So queue storage, table storage, Azure files. This is nothing but file storage. Okay. So these are the supported types. Redundancy, you get all the different options. Locally redundant storage, geo redundant storage, read access geo redundant storage, zone redundant storage, right? Geo zone redundant storage, read access geo zone redundant storage. So all these options we have got. When to use it? Recommended for most Azure scenarios like storing files, managing messages, and organizing data. This is mostly recommended. For most of the business, this should work. But only thing it doesn't have is does not support NFS. So what is NFS? Network file system. Use premium file shares for that. So for that there is another type called premium file shares, which we are going to see in the third slide. Okay. So now this is fine, and let's get an example of this. This is perfect for business needing flexible storage for files or messages unless NFS supports is required. So mostly it will flexible for most of the businesses. Now the second account type is premium block blobs. So when it comes to blobs, you think of videos, audio, right? Premium block blobs. So what is this? Blob storage, including data lake storage. Okay. So blob storage means you have got the understanding. Redundancy, you get only locally redundant storage and zone redundant storage. 2 options you have with this account type. When to use it? Best for situations where you need to store lots of small files and need to access data quickly. So that time you go with the premium block blobs. So what does it mean by lots of small files and access data quickly? We'll see an example. Important note, designed for block blobs and append blobs. So what is all these terms you will learn in detail later, but right now as an introduction, that means files that grow as data is added. Okay, so example, perfect for apps that need to store things like customer orders, product information, right? Product, like you have a video for that product and things like that, that change frequently and need to be accessed quickly. So for that, you can go with the account type premium block blobs. The third is premium file shares. So the best part here, this is only for the file storage. The supported type is file storage. And redundancy options, you get LRS and ZRS. Best for large businesses or applications. So the premium file share is best for large businesses where they need high speed storage. Supports both SMB and NFS. So what is SMB? Server message block. SMB is a protocol. And network file system, NFS protocol for Linux. Okay, these are the two things. So it supports that. So generally this account type fit for mostly the large companies. For example, e-commerce company, which uses a premium file shares to quickly store and share large files like product images, inventory data, ensuring smooth operations. Okay, the higher kind of a account type, premium file shares. The fourth one is a premium page blobs. Now what is this? Page blobs only. So this only supports page blobs, the medias. Only you have local redundancy for this. You don't have other redundancy options. When to use it? Best for storing large files that are frequently updated like virtual hard drives, VHDs. Optimized for page blobs used in virtual machines and large disk storage. Okay. Perfect for businesses that need to store and quickly update virtual machines disk or other large data files. Imagine there are virtual machine disks where you have large amount of data. That time you go for premium page blobs. Okay, all these things we will learn later in detail so that it will make an understanding. Right now, all you have to do, remember these four different types or the account types and bit of their information that we saw. Okay, the first one is a standard general purpose V2 storage account, the basic one, standard general purpose. The second one we saw premium block blobs, and the third one we saw premium file shares where NFS is enabled, and premium page blobs. Okay, these are the four different storage account types. Now let's learn about storage account endpoints. So what are these storage account endpoints? So when you create a storage account in Azure, it's like giving your storage a unique name. You have to provide a very unique name to your storage account so that you can easily find it. This name is combined with a special web address. So there is a web address I'm going to show you. So with the name, you have account name. For example, I'll give company 123. I'll give some specific unique name, and that will have a URL. So adding both the name and the URL, it forms an endpoint. So what is that I'm going to show you? That helps you access the data you store in Azure. Now, there are a couple of key points that we have to remember. One is it should have a unique name, as I said. Each storage account in Azure must have a name that no one else has. This ensures that your data is easy to find. For example, when you create your, let's say Gmail account, your Google account, so that has to be unique, right? Your email ID has to remain unique. Similar way, for Azure storage account, you have to create a very unique name. Length and characters. Your storage account name must be important rule, okay? Remember this. It has to be unique, and the character length should be 3 to 24 characters allowed. 3 to 24. And it can only have lowercase. Remember this. It can only have lowercase. You cannot have uppercase. It can only have lowercase letters and numbers. This is the rule. So it should have unique name, 3 to 24 characters, lowercase letters and numbers. Simple. Now let's have a look at the endpoints. So for example, the endpoint is the address that you use to access different kind of data in Azure. So we saw different kinds of data. Blob storage for your media, audio, Azure file, your file sharing, right? Queue storage, the component, interact data getting queued to the different components of the application. Table storage, NoSQL kind of a data. So these are the URLs. So HTTPS, your storage name, .blob.code.windows.net, .file.code.windows.net, .q.code.windows.net. So this is how the URL looks like. Now let's take an example. If your name and storage account, let's say I have company data 123, then what should be my blob storage URL? It will be https colon, and here I will have to place my account name, which is company data 123.blob.core. Let's say I have got Azure file storage. I have taken this service. Then my link would be company data 123.file.core.windows.net. Let's say I'm using table storage. Then same thing, https colon company data 123.table.core.windows.net. Okay, so you can see blob, file, queue, table. Rest is core.windows.net. So this is how the endpoint or the URL will be created for your Azure account type.